Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hey Pete, welcome back to Films and Stuff.
Hi Ethan, how are you?
Everything is great. It is the end of the first week of January 2023, and that means it's award time.
Indeed. Ethan and I thought it would be a good idea to do a little bit of recap of 2022 in terms of the streaming and cinema landscape. This is not our final year-end results of what was some of the best and worst. This is more of a subjective ranking of what we thought were the 10 best pieces of either cinema or, streaming programs that we saw in 2022. And then we thought we'd give you a little bit of an idea of what we thought were some of the best and worst things about things that we saw on screen.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. The way that I look at it is not so much awards, but just an opportunity to kind of look back over the past 12 months and see some emerging trends and what we enjoyed watching and what we really were disappointed by, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There were a few pleasant surprises in here. We can probably get to those, but there are also some things that, were big swings and misses as far as I'm concerned. Those are the ones that I like to look back and see what went wrong.
Oh, 100%. So maybe what we should do is start with, instead of going with the big swings and misses, let's start with what we thought were some of the best, or at least what I did, and then you can tell me, and I'll work backwards.
Okay.
So for me, at number 10, I've got The Bear on Hulu.
Yes.
I thought that this was a really low-key drama. I really didn't know any of the actors beforehand. Of course, we saw the cousin, and again, Eben Beryl Moss, or Eben Moss. We saw him in Andor for a few episodes, but really before this show, I hadn't heard of any one of them. And I thought this was really an excellent low-stakes drama that was really just focused on this one small deli/restaurant in Chicago. I was very pleasantly surprised by it, and I highly recommend it to anyone.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you more.
Then we had another surprise on my list, Cyberpunk Edgerunners on Netflix. That's at number 9. Oh man,
you love that.
I did. And it's interesting. I am not an anime fan whatsoever. In fact, I generally will go so far as to say that if it's an anime show, I'm out. I'm not interested. So for me, the only reason I watched it was because it has tied into the Cyberpunk universe. I'm a gamer. I liked playing Cyberpunk, the video game. A few friends of mine saw it. They suggested that I watch it. I saw it and I loved it. And even though the whole series is in Japanese and I ended up watching it with subtitles, I thought it was really, really good. And if this is what a few other animes are like, I gotta tell you, I would gladly watch other animes.
Okay, what's next on your list?
Then I've got number 8 was Confess Fletch. I thought that was also a great, pleasant surprise. The trailer snuck up on me out of nowhere. John Hamm, fantastic as that handsome, smarmy, smart alecky, smart guy who is super unassuming, but he knows what's really going on, even though he lets off as not being aware of what's going on. Loved it. I thought it was really good. I don't remember the Fletch movies from Chevy Chase's days back in the 80s very well. I know they were very popular, but I don't remember them well. I think it was a little I would say it was almost a little niche at the time, But having watched this, I would gladly go back to them.
I have to say, I was only disappointed that this movie did not get more attention.
Yeah.
That when you and I, and we're constantly going to the cinema, that it's really disappointing when you look at the lineup of films available to see. And Confess Fletch was not just a diamond in the rough. I mean, it should have been a diamond that was displayed so prominently. John Hamm is a big, big name. Everybody in that movie was exceptionally well known. I'm really surprised that that movie did not get more. I mean, I think it got enough acclaim. I don't think it got enough like press and promotion. That should have been something that we were like eagerly looking forward to for a long time and like bouncing into the cinema. And instead we are bouncing out of the cinema because it was just unknown to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you and I are very in tune with what's going on. Maybe I would say at least more than the average viewer is. And I have to say that I remember when I saw the trailer, I was excited. I sent it to you. It came out of left field for both of us.
Oh, yeah.
And then if I looked at my contacts on my phone, I would imagine that out of, I don't even know how many there are. If there's 100 contacts in there, except for Ethan, I don't think anybody else would have even heard of this movie coming out this year.
Yeah.
So you're right. That says more about whoever promoted this movie than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So that was number 8 for me. Number 7 was another TV series on Paramount Plus, The Offer.
Oh, yeah.
So The Offer, for those of you who don't know it, this is, and I'm not going to be too surprised because Paramount Plus just launched in the UK. This show came out earlier in 2022. So I think the promotion in the UK was very less. But you're looking at Miles Teller playing as Al Ruddy, who was the producer of the Godfather movie. And this is interesting. It's almost like a biopic, but not about a person, but about a movie. So this is a TV series based on the making of Godfather, or the actual physical production of the Godfather movie. And I loved it. I thought it was really good because I loved the books. I loved the movie. All the movies, really. Even the third one, which is universally panned, I didn't mind it, even though, of course, it wasn't the best. And so I was super keen and super happy to see this TV series.
I thought the same thing.
All right, next on my list at number 6, the finale, the whole series, Better Call Saul Season 6 on Netflix or AMC Plus if you're in the US. Again, one of the best, if not the best, dramas available on TV. It's just like Breaking Bad, just an epic TV series. The finale was fantastic. The whole series was done very well. Didn't let me down. I'm sad to see it go, but I'm glad it went the way it did.
I have to say, this is, in my categories, this is something that I've categorized as a sigh of relief. Because I think that this, especially season 6, could have gone so badly.
Yeah.
And it could have undone so much goodwill and anticipation that we've had for years, right? Not just the 6 seasons of Better Call Saul, but the 5 or 6 seasons or 7 seasons of Breaking Bad as well. Had they not stuck the landing, it could have really kind of damaged the legacy of both of those shows and all of those characters, right? We talked about, Kim, how many episodes in a row, wondering what's going to happen to her. I mean, you were so worried about Kim Wexler, for like months at a time.
Yeah.
If that landing had not been stuck the way that it was stuck, I think it would have been really almost like Sopranos like level of disappointment. So for me, I was thrilled with the season finale or the series finale, but more than that, it was a huge sigh of relief that it wasn't going to be something that was going to like forever be frustrating and annoying to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, you're absolutely right. It was one of the few dramas that we've seen where we didn't know what was going to happen, and we really were invested, or at least I was, for each of the characters. And of course, it doesn't have the happiest of endings, but we all knew that. We all knew it wasn't going to have a happy ending. You can't have a happy ending about a corrupt lawyer or about a drug dealer or about a drug maker. It's just not possible. And instead of having some kind of fairy tale ending, they had a very realistic, plausible, satisfying ending.
So melancholy. I felt that it was so melancholy. It just hit the right note, which is, you're right. You cannot have a happy ending for everybody involved, given all the bad stuff that's been happening, right? Someone has to get hurt. But I think that was probably the way that we could all kind of like, do like a slow clap or a nod and smile and be like, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it still left the opportunity in my mind, at least, to say, hey, maybe, when he gets out of jail, if and when he gets out of jail, and you never know with him, he and Kim Wexler get back together, because I liked the two of them together. I really did. I mean, I don't know. I just really liked her. I really like him. I don't know. Anyway. So yeah, that's my...
I mean, how upset would you have been at the season finale if like Kim would have gone to visit him in prison and found out that he was like shanked to death, like a week prior in like a prison riot?
Yeah. So that's what I was worried was going to happen. I was really scared
and you just see her like she like brings him like some, like socks and like some, like toiletries,
cigarettes, or a Cinnabon as a joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And they're like, oh, sorry, he was stabbed to death in a riot last week. You just see her like shaking like in the corner. That could have been maybe powerful, but I think we would have been like unhappy with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The absence of closure,
It's just terrible. I mean, yeah, exactly. So there was a closure to the story, but not to the relationship, and I love that. So I think that was very good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, okay. So now it's our top 5, and I think you're going to agree with me on most of these. Number 5, The Umbrella Academy on Netflix.
Oh man,
Season
thank you
3.
for including that. Absolutely. S3 of The Umbrella Academy was exceptional.
It is one of the few... for me, I think this was, it strikes the greatest of balances between humor, superhero powers, gore, and, reality of superheroes. Like The Boys, I think, goes a little bit too far, but that's probably also because The Boys is a little bit more of a parody of itself, or of the whole genre.
Yeah.
So, and I love The Boys, don't get me wrong, but I like The Umbrella Academy because it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's got elements of humor in it. It's got elements of, let's say, fan service in there. I don't know. I just think the whole story is very good. Sad to say that next season is going to be the last season. But, I hope they'll stick the landing. I really hope that they continue, because this is on Netflix. This is one of the few series that actually I look forward to every year.
I have to say a special thanks, though, to you, Pete, because you got me invested in The Umbrella Academy. And there were really 2 things that I would not have been able to push through on my own. The first is that the cover art I thought was not compelling to me, and it didn't express how good this was going to be. And the second was, I have to say, that first episode was pretty rough. It showed like the lady giving birth in a pool. It showed like the 7 nannies pushing like 7 bassinets of babies. I would not have pushed through that first episode, honestly.
Yeah.
Had you not been there for me, and that's I mean, that's of course a huge thanks to you, but that's also a warning to whoever put this together that there's probably a lot of people that haven't gotten the opportunity to appreciate the Umbrella Academy because it just starts off so rough, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I can't recommend it enough. It is,
I second that,
one of the best superhero-esque or superhero genre-esque TV series.
I think it's just funny as hell.
Yeah.
For me, that humor hits so, it's just right on the nose.
It's very smart. It's not childish. It's not, it's not immature in any way. It's just perfect. Mm-hmm. It's really perfect. And I think it's a good combination of everybody's talents, right? You've got the funny one. You've got the dour one. You've got the smart and sassy one. It's just, it works. It works on so many levels.
Yeah. All right. That's number 5.
Number 4. And this is a toss-up. Really, it was a toss-up. Both of these are TV series. The first, so even though it is number 4, it's a joint 4th. Tokyo Vice on HBO Max.
Yep.
And For All Mankind on Apple TV.
Whoa, that's a lot of star power combined for number 4.
It is, but it's not star power in the traditional sense, right? You've got I can't even remember the kid's name in Tokyo Vice.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So that's a problem.
Baby Driver.
Yeah. No, it's not even Baby. It's not Anson.
Yes, it is. Tokyo Vice?
Is it?
Elson Egor, right?
I'm sorry. I can't remember.
Yeah, it is.
In any case, Tokyo Vice.
Also,
Ansel Elgort. You're right. It is Ansel Elgort.
Yeah.
So Tokyo Vice, I thought was phenomenal. I thought it was, again, is based on, from what I understand, it's based on a book, but it is also based on a true story.
Yeah.
It's an excellent it seems like it's low stakes, but clearly in season 2, it looks like it's going to start upping the ante very quickly. Murder mystery / investigative journalism mystery. It's very good. If you like Ken Watanabe as much as I do, anything he's in, you want to watch. Very, very, very good. I can't get enough of it. And of course, on the flip side, on the sci-fi side, For All Mankind, we've been watching this. I think it was Ethan who turned me on to it. I loved it.
Yeah.
And, we did a weekly recap of it on this show. It is one of the best sci-fi shows. Not the best. I still think that's Foundation. But in terms of alternate history sci-fi shows, it's one of the best. Really, really excellent, stellar cast. And I love that, we sat there, we made a few predictions. We were on the money with a few of them, but that's got to be one of my biggest successes this year. We called out the North Korea thing 6 episodes before it happened. I'm very happy.
I have to say, I think for me, For All Mankind has a special place in my heart because I think more than almost any other series, there were so many dynamic moving pieces and characters that there were a lot of different configurations that show could take on, right? And very few other shows, I think, have that complete uncertainty or blank canvas to go in so many different directions. Most of them, kind of where they're headed. They may be taking some detours. They may be taking some shortcuts. There may be some unforeseen obstacles, of course, but generally you kind of see the roadmap that they're going to take. For me, For All Mankind was so pleasant to watch because there were so many open areas on what's going to happen on Earth, what's going to happen on Mars, what's going to happen with the US program, what's going to happen with the Russian program, what's going to happen with the private program, right? I thought it was really interesting to have so many different players and so many different, opportunities for competition, cooperation. I thought that was the most fun I had watching the show in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and you're absolutely right. It's the show that you watched and you wanted to spend an hour dissecting it to figure out what's going to happen. And even when you when you got it on the money, or sorry, when you thought you had it on the money, it pulls a complete, 180 on you and goes in a totally different direction.
Yeah, I think probably if you would capture our ratios, we spent for all the other shows for like 1 hour a show, we would probably spend 30 to 45 minutes recapping and making some predictions. Whereas I think for All Mankind, for 1 hour of show, we'd probably spend an hour and a half projecting where it could go.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it wasn't so much recap, it was talking about where it goes next.
I totally agree. And that's why For All Mankind is at number 4. Number 3, now we're getting into, unsurprisingly, you'll see that the top 3 are all movies, because I generally think that movies have a harder and more immediate impact than TV series do. Yeah. So number 3 for me was Matt Reeves' The Batman, which we saw all the way back at the beginning of the year.
Wow. It seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
It does. And
especially with everything that's happening in DC, that really seems like a lifetime ago.
It does. You're absolutely right. This seems almost... It'll be really interesting to see what happens next, if anything, with the Batman. Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson and so forth are the safest in terms of HBO / Warner Brothers / Discovery, because they're the ones that are the least connected to any other connected DC universe. Mm-hmm. We know that there is a Penguin TV series coming out on HBO Max, and I believe at least at the time of this recording, it has not been canceled. So if that's the case, I would hope to see more of the Batman. I think everyone gave him grief, but I think Robert Pattinson really pulled it off as Batman. He was a little bit more of a goth / emo Batman than I would have preferred. But I think we saw that he's going to start to at least mentally transition for the next movie. So let's see where that goes, if it goes anywhere.
I mean, the one thing that you've said to me, Pete, if there's a statement or a theory that you gave me in 2022 that really blew my mind, was that it's important to decouple Batman from Bruce Wayne. And when you said that, like, I just fell over, because that's so true. And I think that's exactly right, which is Pattinson was a pretty good Batman. And he was probably an equally lousy Bruce Wayne.
Oh, yeah. Horrendous.
And I think that's the question mark that needs to be resolved at Warner, which is, do you want this dude to continue to play Batman? And can he somehow improve on Bruce Wayne? Because he was really, really horrible as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. In a Justice League movie, this is the Batman you'd want, only because in Justice League, generally speaking, it's always about the superheroes. It's never about the alter egos. Very rarely do you see an alter ego. So that's fine, because we'd rarely see Bruce Wayne. We'd almost always see the Batman. But in this movie in particular, there were quite a few scenes where we saw Bruce Wayne, and in none of them did he impress me as Bruce Wayne, or at least as the image of Bruce Wayne that I have from the comics, from the TV series, from the cartoons, from all of them.
I mean, that's though, I think Batman, more than any other character, right, has that dual persona that you really have to. You know, Superman and Clark Kent. Clark Kent isn't really...
He's so like a bowl of plain rice, in the sense that anybody could be
He's
that.
Intended to be.
Exactly.
He's intended to be overlooked.
Exactly.
Whereas Bruce Wayne is a big guy.
He's a billionaire playboy.
Yeah, he's a big character.
Right. Because
and that's that. But what you said is actually the defining term. Yes, he's a billionaire. Is he a playboy? Because we've seen him played a few different ways, right?
Yep.
You've seen the Christian Bale, which was proper Playboy. Some other folks have kind of downplayed, how ostentatious or extravagant he is, right?
Ben Affleck came close.
Yeah.
He wasn't quite at that Playboy level, but he looks great in a tuxedo. He looks, he looked the part. I don't know if he had that overweening pride as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
So that's number 3. Now this is gonna be where it's controversial because I'm gonna just say it out right now. Number 2, Top Gun Maverick. And
I think you're trying to get a rise out of me because you want me to argue that should be number 1, but I'm not going to do that yet.
Well, you'll know why I say what my number 1 movie is when I tell you. Number 1, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I'm biased, and I fully expect that to not be the case. And I know the reality is that Top Gun Maverick, for me, actually is the number 1 movie or the number 1 entertainment event of 2022. Let's not kid ourselves.
I think, much like I said, that there is a sigh of relief award for the season finale of Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
There is also maybe a special category of sigh of relief for cinema. I've also got another one for television. I'll get to that when we go through your list. But for cinema, I think the sigh of relief for Maverick is maybe the largest sigh in cinematic history. I don't think there's ever been another sequel that had higher stakes. Right?
Absolutely.
It was just because it was so beloved and revered. It was the length of time, right? I mean, we've had maybe better movies that have had a sequel, but I think it was the amount of time that passed between the original Top Gun. And all of those characters are just like embedded in culture, right? Iceman and Goose and Maverick. I mean, those are just like cultural references now. Yeah. Wingman, things like that are just like cannot be ignored. I think the sigh of relief that Maverick was just exceptional, that deserves a specific award. I think you can say, look, I prefer this movie over Maverick, and that's fine. But I think you can't deny the fact that the stakes to write and to produce that movie were huge. And by and large, they nailed it.
Absolutely. And we're gonna come back to this because he also features in my best/worst list of 2022. So let's give a quick shout out to my main man, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Obviously this wasn't the number 1 movie cinematically for a lot of people. I think it was maybe number 1, or let's be very frank, it's number 2 for me. But The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent was everything that I wanted it to be as a huge Nicolas Cage fan. It was funny.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that movie, and I also think Confess Fletch had a lot in common, which those are movies that were just pure exceptional writing and great acting, and there wasn't a moment of downtime or awkward scenes or unnecessary superfluous stuff. They just flowed really, really well from start to end.
Yeah, and the humor was exactly right. Self-deprecating without being too much, self-promoting without being, again, a bit too arrogant.
Yeah.
It was just perfect. Pedro Pascal, everyone gives him a lot of credit for being a great dramatic actor from, Narcos Mexico. And then, of course, we've seen him as a really good action star in The Mandalorian. But I don't think that he gets a lot of credit for his comedic chops. And Pedro Pascal is a really funny guy. And if there was ever a movie that proved it to you, this was it.
I mean, he's funny, but I have to say he's funny in the sense that he needs good writing, and he needs, like, for example, when I think of of his funniest scene. It was the one where he and Nicolas Cage kind of like switch shoes in the Jeep. Do you remember that?
Yep.
I mean, that is a funny scene. Like we laughed at it. But for me, that's a function of him being able to kind of deadpan and be affable. But it really takes, I think, exceptional writing to kind of put him in that position where he's able to be funny. You know, he's not Kevin Hart or The Rock, where they're able to kind of like take any old line that you throw at them and make it funny. But if you put him in the right position, yes, he's got like, I think he's able to make something funny.
So I like the scene for me that kind of clinched it as one of the funniest ones is when they're trying to climb over that wall.
Yes.
Right? And when he looks like he thinks that he's giving himself up to save Nicolas Cage's life, only then to walk around the wall that was literally 3 feet away from him. That's what I mean, in the sense that, look, with all due respect, Kevin Hart is a comedian. That's his he's a stand-up comedian first. Right. He's an actor second. That's his bread and butter. I think The Rock gets away with a lot because of his excellent charisma.
Oh, we'll get there.
And let's be very, very frank. I think The Rock right now, for me, is at an all-time low. I don't know if you've seen it. There's been a lot of really negative, like, behind-the-scenes news that has come out from his stemming from his behavior on Black Adam. So there's a lot out there, and who knows what's true, what's not true. But it's just some of the things that have been coming out seem so plausible that you're just like, ugh, you know, it puts him in a very negative light. So I'm just like, all right, fine. I'm kind of taking a step back from The Rock.
Yeah.
But in general, I don't know. I just found Pedro Pascal to be much funnier than I had anticipated. And Nicolas Cage was a really good sport, I thought. Because while this movie wasn't making fun of him outright that way, there were definitely shots taken at his career. And I think he was really good about that. And I think in general, Nicolas Cage has been very good about that. So kudos to him.
Yeah, I agree. Well said.
So that is.
Can I ask? Yeah. Can I ask? Now that we've unveiled your number one movie, what was your number one disappointment in movies?
So let's do that. That's a good point. So for me, I had the best/worst of 2022. I would say the biggest disappointment of the year was this. When I say small, I mean was Me Time on Netflix. Kevin Hart, Mark Wahlberg. I say Kevin Hart, but really, I say Me Time, but really it should just be Kevin Hart in general in terms of his Netflix anything. They've all been really bad. The Man from Toronto, not great. Me Time, really terrible. Like, he's been pumping out these mediocre movies for a long time now, and I think he's doing it just because basically he's a funny guy, so everyone thinks that let's try to get the next Jumanji, let's try to get the next Central Intelligence, or whatever you want to call it. Let's see what movie we can make and make a lot of money on. And I think he's coasting because these movies are all terrible.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Hart is funny, but I also think that he needs the right structure around him, and he needs to play off of some people. He cannot, and I mean, I'm talking about this like it's such an easy thing to do, but he cannot just carry a movie based on his comedy alone. He doesn't have it. And I don't think that his comedy is that type that can just, straight up carry
yeah.
And, like Jim Carrey could, right? He had that level of comedy. It was just different. Kevin Hart his best comedy is when he's also kind of making fun of himself, when he's kind of he's always like, diminishes himself a little bit, either because of his height or his stature or something. and that's kind of one of the reasons why he plays so well off the rock
He,
is that physically they contradict each other, but
yeah,
he always falls, I think, in movies like that, where I hesitate to say he's a supporting actor, but where he's not the sole main lead, he's exceptional and he makes all those movies great. When it's just like, okay, let's just make Kevin Hart say a bunch of crazy Kevin Hart stuff. I feel like he's like, hey, I don't have that range. That's not
yeah,
me, you know?
you're right. He plays best off of somebody else. But the
Yeah.
problem is, even then, it's getting less and less. Maybe the shtick is
Yeah.
wearing thin. I don't know. But like,
Yeah.
it didn't. Mark Wahlberg that way theoretically could have been a good foil, but it
Yeah.
just didn't come off for me.
Yeah. Like I feel like they're gonna stick him, just like they did Ryan Reynolds this year in the Christmas movie with Will Ferrell.
Yeah,
I
Spirited.
feel like, yeah, I feel like they're gonna stick like Ryan Reynolds and Kevin Hart in a movie at some point, right? And those two might have a good vibe.
Maybe, maybe I don't know. To be honest, I just don't know. I think it's also
Yeah.
been, and this could also just be a matter of overexposure. There's been so many Kevin Hart projects, even just in the last couple of years, where you're just like,
And commercials.
let's yeah.
And
There's
commercials.
just been too much, and then
Yeah.
and that's just on the entertainment side. On the sports side, like
Yeah.
he's always in the booth on on the sidelines for the NFL. He's on the
Yeah.
booth for the NBA. And, if the Eagles make it, he'll be there for the Super Bowl. Like, it's just, that's his thing, is he tries to be
Yeah.
everywhere, which is fine. But
Justin
that
Bieber.
kind of level of exposure, the risk is you get overexposed. And I think that's exactly
Yeah.
what's happened.
Yeah.
So let me ask you
Yeah.
this. So that was our biggest disappointment. What was your biggest disappointment of the year?
Oh, cinema wise, I've got two.
Ooh, okay.
I'm not gonna say Black Adam and I'm not gonna say Morbius because I have low expectations for those two.
Sure.
So it has to be something that I had high expectations for. And the two that really, really disappointed me was The Northman, that I thought was going to be kind of like a modern day Gladiator,
Okay.
uh, something like that was a little bit timeless based on the trailers. To be honest, I thought
Sure.
that was going to be
Sure.
great. And the second one is Bullet Train because I'm
Really?
uh, yeah, I'm a really big fan. And I thought the idea was kind of cool. I thought the trailer was okay. And I was expecting that to be something that was, I guess I just thought it was going to be funny. I thought it was going to be witty. I thought there was going to be more of like like Murder on the Orient Express. I thought it was going to be more like mystery-ish and not so much just like stabby. I found it was more stabby, not a lot of intrigue, kind of set fight scenes and throwaway lines. Those are my two biggest disappointments. I didn't think either of those are going to be my favorite movie of 2022, but I thought I was going to really enjoy both of those movies.
Yeah.
And both of them I thought were like walkout worthy, you know?
Yeah. I enjoyed Bullet Train. I didn't enjoy, Northman, I thought was fine. I didn't think it was anything great, but I also did not expect it to be like a 300 or a Gladiator. So
Yeah.
I can understand if you walked in with that expectation, I can understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can totally see
Disappointing. Disappointing.
So let's switch it up. What do you think was the best superhero movie this year? And I mean that because that is now a de facto genre, right?
Yeah, I guess it is. I guess it was Batman or the Batman.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything else that was even approached that, both in terms of, not Thor, Love and Thunder. I don't think Black Panther, but I think that the Batman had a huge amount of hype coming out, and I think it was absolutely worth my time.
Yeah, wonderful. For me, it was so I thought about the Batman too, and I just thought that look, for me, a superhero movie has to be Not that it wasn't enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. I gave it a must watch in cinema. I thought the Batman was very good. But I think when I think of a superhero movie, I also think of like your quintessential popcorn flick. Like you go in there, you check your brain at the door, and you come out being like, wow, those were some amazing effects. That was a great fun time. And for me, that was, and maybe this says a little bit about the quality of the movies that came out this year. It was Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I certainly had
Oh man,
problems.
that's a very, very good one. I have to say, not bad.
Yeah,
But
I mean, certainly
if
had
I'm
problems
looking
with
at
it.
that though, Pete, I'm looking at our ratings though, but you gave Doctor Strange 2, you gave it a
Wait for streaming. Yeah. Yeah. No, again, so that's what I mean.
But I think looking back, sometimes it does take looking back. I think you might be right about that. The Batman was very dark and very long, and it was good, but you're right. It wasn't a date night popcorn munching type of flick. It was serious. Whereas you're right, Strange 2, which had its own issues, right?
Oh, it had a ton of them, but it was still one of the more, let's call it whimsical
It
films.
had good levity. Yeah, you're
It
right.
had levity. It was colorful. It was, you didn't,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying I felt dour, but like
Yeah.
it was a little bit of, like the Batman was a little bit of a dark and dour movie, and by design, by the way. So, and I'm not saying that as a criticism, I'm saying that as a positive. But when I think of a superhero movie, when I think of a quintessential superhero movie, I'm thinking of like the Avengers. I'm just thinking of like, all right, I'm in it for some great action sequences. I want to see
Yeah.
some splash of color. I want to see someone get their ass handed to them. I really want to see a
Yeah.
good fight sequence or two.
Yeah.
I'm not so worried if the plot makes sense. So even though the movie itself, I was critical of, there were still elements of it that I liked and didn't like. Overall, in the grand scheme of things, I think it was the best that this year had to offer. And I think that's also just an indictment of this year, is that it wasn't that good. The DC universe was all terrible. The Marvel universe wasn't great. I mean, it was either that or Thor, and I thought and Black Panther. Thor, I thought, was a disappointment, relatively speaking, and Black Panther was good too, but also a little long, and I had more problems with it. I had other problems with it. I don't know. I just think that in terms of baggage, the least amount of baggage that came out of it was probably Doctor Strange too.
Yeah, I felt the same way about Thor. Thor, I would have really enjoyed. I would have been very happy to have loved that movie. But I agree, I wasn't able to enjoy it because I felt like it was just kind of mucking things up throughout, you know?
Yeah.
Black Panther, I think, is a very good movie. But I think it's also a little bit serious.
Yeah, plus I think there was a lot of emotional baggage tied with
Yeah.
Chadwick Boseman,
Yeah,
how they had
there
to
was.
handle it. And again, they did
Yeah.
it beautifully. They did it really respectfully, but it, and they had to do it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it was just not, I can understand why, like, it wasn't a summer movie versus it was a later in the year movie.
Yeah. Can I make another suggestion though, that if it had been in cinemas, we may have loved it. And that's the Adam Project. Remember that on Netflix?
I do remember the Ryan Reynolds movie,
Yeah, with
time
Ryan Reynolds.
traveling, and even
Yeah.
with yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good movie.
Yeah. We watched that on Netflix and we both liked it. Had that been in a cinema, I think that's the type of low stakes, high return, keep things light, but at the same time engaged. You walk out of that thing on a Friday night, with your tub of popcorn. That would have been a good cinema, film to watch it.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that also, we should talk about this because Knives Out was the most recent example of it.
Oh yeah.
But like the streaming companies are coming out with such content that they're not releasing it in the right forums. And I think Knives Out would have been such a great, and I saw it in the cinema and I really appreciate that. And the limited release of Knives Out was too limited. I think they should have had a proper theatrical run for it. And I think that kind of hurt Knives Out at the end of the day. So let's see what they do for the third one. But okay, and what did you think was the worst superhero film of 2022?
I guess I have to say it was absolutely Black Adam. I mean, I would say Morbius, but Morbius, I had no interest in seeing. Morbius was terrible all the way around, but I kind of was expecting it to be bad. Black Adam, I think, was disappointing, maybe from two different perspectives. The first is that the story itself just was not great. And I think the second part is not just did it diminish The Rock, who used to be like on this pedestal of beloved, characters. I think it really diminished him, not only seeing him in that role, but seeing him in a bad movie. But then all the subsequent nonsense, whether it's overblown or not, I think everything about Black Adam has been really disappointing from start to finish.
Yeah, so for me it was tough. I actually had a couple. I thought Morbius was a horrendous superhero movie.
Oh yeah.
And I thought Samaritan on Amazon Prime, starring what's his face, Sylvester Stallone, also really, really bad. And I mean like horrendously bad.
Like for me, the reason Samaritan, and I did not watch Samaritan. However, my parents watched Samaritan. And they told me it's bad, and you told me it's bad. So based on that, I have no interest in seeing it. But I felt like Samaritan, you kind of expected it to be bad, and therefore I didn't really have anything emotionally invested in it. The stakes were lower, right? You didn't have to go to the cinema. You didn't have to wait in line. You didn't have to buy a ticket. You didn't have to buy your popcorn. You didn't waste 2 hours, sitting somewhere watching a bad movie. You could just watch it at home, and once it got bad, you could just, do something else on your mobile phone, right?
Right.
So for me, Samaritan isn't as disappointing as Morbius, for example, because Morbius was a big cinematic release. You did all the pomp and circumstance and the logistics to get there, and then the film was just like, blah.
Yeah. Just horrendous.
Right.
Just really terrible. Okay, what's next? What was your surprise of the year?
Oh, my surprise of the year is probably 2 different series that I watched, and I think we both loved them. The first was Night Sky, and the second was The Old Man on Hulu.
Okay.
I thought both of those were not just exceptional, but they almost like came out of nowhere, and I really, really enjoyed both of those. So I'd say that those are my 2 surprises. If I'm choosing a film that was a surprise, I think it was Emily the Criminal. You remember this?
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that because that's on my list as well.
Yeah. So, really enjoyed watching Emily the Criminal, and I think we talked about a little bit that we would not be opposed to a sequel.
Yeah.
Not sure it's going to justify one, but we would absolutely not be opposed to a sequel.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had Emily the Criminal also on my list of surprises, but I also had 2 other ones. So one, I had Tulsa King. I did not expect to like it as much as I did.
Thank you. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I'm absolutely with you, and I'm done saying absolutely. I am with you. Never saw
Sylvester Stallone. I mean, he's not exactly known for his dramatic roles. Yeah. Say what you will. I thought he was excellent in the first Creed movie. Maybe even, I can't remember the second one, but he was good in those movies in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't really seen him do a proper dramatic role in a while because he's been now tied to like the Expendables franchise. So he's all bulked up and hulked out and roided out or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Films and stuff caveat, we're not implying that he's on steroids. He's just in fantastic shape for a 75-year-old.
But honestly, God bless him if he is.
If he
is, at least I have to say, at least he gives a crap. And he at least gives a crap about his fans and his role and looking his best. So I have to say, like, my hat's off to him. If he is, or whatever he's doing, whether it's vitamin C supplements or gluten-free or the Liver King diet, whatever, I appreciate that he takes his craft so seriously that he's willing to do it.
And I think the biggest surprise, or one of the biggest surprises for me this year, was Lou. The movie itself, not great, but the idea of Allison Janney being this crazy, like, physical CIA operative who can kick a 20-year-old young military man's ass blew me away.
I'm ready for the Saturday Night Live spoof of who else that you would never imagine is also going to, become like now a elderly or retiree superhero. I have to say, again, bravo to Allison Janney for pulling off something that I never even would have guessed she had in her bag of tricks. But the movie was pretty much a dud, and I think that it was extraordinarily unrealistic in terms of her physical prowess. Bravo to her for trying to pull it off. She did pulling it off.
Well, yeah, exactly. Not well, yeah. Say what you will. She pulled it off. Again, you're right. The movie I thought was not great, but I was just really impressed with that.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Very similar to the old, but a little bit similar to the old man, right? Also retiree.
Yes, but in the old man, we saw a little bit of it, but in the sense that the old man wasn't so much about his physicality as an old man. It was more about the spycraft. You did see him do a little bit of action as an old man, but you didn't. That wasn't his thing. His thing was more about being a spy.
Yeah.
Right. At no point do we see John Lithgow do a triple somersault and, karate chop a guy in the neck. At no point do we see that happen with, I always confuse his name. Not Michael Douglas.
The other dude.
It'll come to me.
Slow horses. Yeah.
So, Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
So, fine. Good stuff. What about, what did you think was the best sequel / remake / reboot of the year?
I think we have to say, if we're talking about streaming, I think we have to give a special award to House of the Dragon Season 1 on HBO Max.
Okay.
Considering Game of Thrones, which by and large was untouchable for 7 seasons, and then it had a pretty uneven, to put it kindly, 8th season. The stakes, again, I think for House of the Dragon were super, super high. Myself included, didn't really see a lot of compelling content that we really needed to see. And I have to say, it could have gone very, very wrong, and it would have undone a lot of goodwill, I think, for Game of Thrones. But instead, I have to say right now, the way that House of the Dragon is going, and I really wish they would have slowed it down and dragged that season 1 out a lot longer. But I thought that's giving the original kind of a run for its money in terms of compelling television.
Yeah. You're right. It had a lot of baggage. Yeah. Of all of the... I would say the same actually applies to Rings of Power. Both those shows had a lot of baggage that weren't fairly or unfairly were tossed on their backs. I would say that House of the Dragon probably shrugged off most, if not all of that baggage the best. Yeah. I think Lord of the Rings still has an uphill climb. So let's see where that goes. For me, I don't know if you saw it or if you didn't. On Hulu, they made a direct Hulu movie called Prey.
I did see it.
which is the very first slash super prequel
Predator.
to Predator.
Yep. Yep.
And I really, really liked it. I thought that this was them going back to the formula to make what made Predator really great. One alien versus a bunch of natives, Native Americans and pioneers or whatever they're called, and I thought it was wonderfully done. I don't know the main actor's role, but she did such a phenomenal job. I was so impressed. I really liked it. I thought that was good. And generally speaking, these kinds of movies aren't really my genre. It bordered on horror, but because I liked the original Predator so much, I watched it and I was so happy with it.
I watched it as well. I mean, and I had a very indifferent approach to it. I thought it was well done. Is interesting. I think that there's two things that probably detracted from this show for me. The first is that the original Predator is wow, right? Just in terms of the suspense, in terms of the acting, including the bad acting, the characters. I think that original Predator was just so wow. It's hard to have anything else that's going to compare to that. And the second part is that there's been a lot of Predator movies. There's been Predator, Predator 2, some other Predator, Alien versus Predator. Like there's been a lot of other Predator stuff. So I felt like this was called Prey. I was just kind of not really, maybe I just had a little bit of like overload on Predator.
Sure, sure. That's fair enough. And what did you think was the worst sequel slash remake slash reboot or whatever of the year?
Well, I guess if we're gonna say if we're talking about like an intellectual property, probably She-Hulk on Disney Plus.
No, but I
I
wouldn't
think
qualify that as a sequel or a remake. But I get what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah. I
it's
mean
a part of the
that's why I said
continuity, I
if
guess.
that's an intellectual property, yeah. If we're just doing probably like a separate season, I guess I've been really disappointed in Westworld, which
Okay.
hasn't been renewed. But the Westworlds, I mean, started season one, like flat out blew my mind. Season two, I was just obsessed. And then season three got a little bit weird. And then I was hoping that it kind of recalibrated for season four, and it fell flat for me. And I guess that's really a disappointing end to it, right? And I think that makes me appreciate things like Better Call Saul and like these other seasons or other series that go into four, five, six, and they've just stick the landing so well, right? Ozark is an example. The ones that do it so good, you really have to appreciate because it's so easy to just kind of like lose the plot, and whether it's just out of ideas or they changed the writers or something. I found that Westworld from the first two seasons to the last two seasons just fell off a cliff, and it's really disappointing to me because I was just obsessed with it at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a. I'm glad it's over because I didn't know where it was going, and B, it just the last season kind of I think it got away from them. I think
It's
they
not easy. I mean, even like Billions has stayed relevant for six seasons now, right?
yeah, something like that. That's right.
Jack Ryan's been relevant for a few seasons now. The Boys, right, on
Yeah.
Amazon Prime has been great for three seasons now. It's not easy to do it. So when you see something fall off a cliff, I mean, mercifully, HBO said, "Look, that's just it for Westworld. We don't need like a season five after that." So they kind of put it out of their misery, and even though we're not really going to have any closure. I wasn't really like dying for any closure. Just didn't like the way that it was going, right? It was just getting too weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. No, and I'm with you. I think for me, the the sequel of the year that was probably the worst, or not sequel. In this case, it wasn't a sequel; it was a remake. Was Spirited, the Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell musical take on the Three Ghosts of Christmas.
Man, that had Christmas classic written all over it.
Yeah,
they just couldn't pull it off. Huh?
I think that's exactly it. And I'm not saying it's not a good movie. I'm sure there are other people out there who loved it and who will consider it a classic on their film staple like Elf. But it just didn't do it for me. I couldn't stand it. I don't remember finishing it because I turned it off. I was just done.
It's hard. It's hard to capture lightning in a bottle, right? I mean, when Will Ferrell did Elf, I mean, he was a much younger man. How old is Elf? Is that 20 years old?
Something like that, yeah. It's got to be because right? It was one of Jon Favreau's first movies.
Yeah.
One of, not the first, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was a younger guy. I mean, he was a legitimate elf. And I don't know. I wish Will Ferrell would tell us how he feels, because I feel like he's a little bit Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey's like, hey, I'm getting to be an old man. I'm not going to continue to be in these rom-coms with like 25-year-olds for the rest of my life. Time to move on and get into like some weird roles, right? And I felt like Will Ferrell, and God bless him, I know he wanted to be in Winning Time about the Lakers, but I mean, I feel like he hasn't kind of transitioned to that thing yet, right? Whether it's no one wants him in those roles or whether he just kind of loves doing the comedy. But I felt like they were just trying to capture the same magic that they had for Elf and pair him with Ryan Reynolds, whose snarkiness, jumps off the screen. And it seemed like a very good match, but I agree, it was a little bit flat. Huh?
Yeah. So, I mean, say what you will, like, he is a good dramatic actor. Stranger Than Fiction, I thought that was fantastic. I thought he was very good on it, good in it with Maggie Gyllenhaal. I thought the whole thing was great, but I don't know. I just thought it was really not good. I was really disappointed with it. I didn't have any expectations for it one way or another, but I just didn't like it at all.
Yeah. The Christmas season does not have an absence of content either, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you can watch something like Elf every single year.
Yeah.
It never, or even the Santa Claus, right, with Tim Allen.
Or Die Hard.
Never. Yeah.
Which I still think is the quintessential Christmas movie.
Yeah. So those movies really never age. And then, of course, you've got Hallmark is making Christmas movies, around the calendar. There's no absence of Christmas movies from, Hallmark, every type of configuration. So I think to come up with a new classic like this, ambitious, I love the casting, but it's really hard to capture that lightning in a bottle at the same time.
Yeah. And now for our two most important, let's start with number one, the second to last, the least valuable player of Hollywood or of the entertainment industry. Who do you
Individual?
think? Individual. Now we're calling names out. We're calling people out. Who's the LVP of the year?
Oh man.
I'll get started so you have some more time to think about it.
Yeah.
Jared Leto in Morbius. I think Jared Leto has gone quite some distance in potentially destroying or coming close to destroying the Sony Spidey universe.
Not bad. I mean, when you first asked me, I was going to say Chris Pratt.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I say that is that he was in Jurassic World 3.
Terrible.
And that's the movie that if he's gonna carry something, it's got the brand, it's got everything. If he's gonna carry something, he should have carried that. And then I saw him in Thor: Love and Thunder, and eh, it was only a little cameo. It didn't really do much. And then we saw him in what was the
The Terminal List on Amazon Prime?
Oh man, he was terrible at the Terminal List. But I was thinking also Guardians of the Galaxy, the Christmas special.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, he again also not very prominent in that, but yeah.
So the first name that popped into my head, because we've seen a lot of him this year, and he's now A-list, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's Star-Lord. He's the guy who's supposed to carry Jurassic World. No one else. And Jurassic World felt really flat for both me and you. And if there's ever going to be a franchise that he could have carried, you know, what are you waiting for? So I think it's Pratt. Even though I think Chris Pratt's great. Like when he's at his peak, he's super funny and he's great. But I mean, none of these things, and that's multiple different examples. Did he have a performance where you could say like he was outstanding in that, you know, or even like if you say Guardians of the Galaxy, the Christmas special, you can't say like, wow, he stole the scenes. He was only in 2 scenes, but he stole them. Thor: Love and Thunder, I wish we would have seen more of him. He was so funny in those 2 scenes, right? He just came and did his Chris Pratt kind of smirky stuff, and that was it. So that's who my award goes to.
Yep. I had Leto what was the other one? So it was Morbius, and then also House of Gucci, where he plays that ridiculous accent. So, yeah. For me, Leto was hands down the LVP of the year, but let's end on a really good note. MVP of the year. All entertainment across Hollywood.
Whoa. Let me hear what you've got.
Tom Cruise for single-handedly bringing cinema back. I think 2022, for all its greatness, for all its faults, one of the things that no one will be able to take away was Tom Cruise's dedication to Hollywood. Whether you love the guy, whether you hate the guy, whatever issues you have with him, and a lot of people have a lot of issues with him, that's fine. I don't have any problems with him. I love the guy. I think he was the one who basically said, I am going to put a stranglehold on Paramount. We're going to make, if we're going to make remake Top Gun with a legacy sequel, we're going to do it my way. I'm going to insist on doing it with practical effects, real jets. And when the pandemic hit, I'm going to force Paramount to sit on it for 3 years or 2 years until it's done before we finally release it in the cinema. And I don't care if Paramount gets worried or not. He stuck by his guns. He stuck to them, and he said, we're doing it my way or we're not doing it at all. And kudos to him, because not only did he do it, he killed it.
I think that's a very, very good choice and an even better justification. I cannot poke holes or criticize that selection at all. I think you're really right about that. Cruise has really, I think in the past couple of years, elevated himself, from A-list to just kind of like historical icon.
Yeah, almost legendary status.
Yeah. And there's not, Brad Pitt, on the other hand, who at one point, I mean, those are both A-listers, right?
Yeah.
But Brad Pitt, you feel like he's more just kind of like catching whatever is thrown at him, and he's not really like creating his own gravity. Whereas Cruise seems to be like, hey, I'm manipulating things the way that I want them to be.
Yeah.
You know, I'm developing, you know, how I think things should fall. And Brad Pitt's like, hey, I'm a super big star. Let's get a really good role. How about Bullet Train? Great. I'll be the star. Let's make it.
I think that also comes down to the fact that Brad Pitt doesn't have any franchises under his belt, whereas Cruise has at least two. Right? Where he can say Mission Impossible. He literally picked it up and dragged it from television to movies back in 95, 96. And he's done the same now for, what was the other one?
Top Gun?
I guess Top Gun.
Not Reacher anymore.
Not Reacher. What am I thinking of? Or am I confusing it with somebody else?
I don't know if he's got another franchise, right?
Mission Impossible, and I guess it's just Mission Impossible. I don't know why I thought of Top Gun as a franchise, but yeah, okay.
I mean, I think one of the things you and I were surprised about is that until Maverick,
he didn't have a $1 billion movie. That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I feel like Brad Pitt's he's more Hollywood.
He's old school Hollywood.
They've both been heartthrobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Pitt, I felt, kind of was looking at Bullet Train to be his Liam Neeson, John Wick type thing, right?
Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah. Look, Brad Pitt also is undergoing what I think is a career resurgence / renaissance at the moment. He, for good or for bad, for the last 5-10 years, he's kind of been battling his own personal demons, whether it's in his relationship or whether it's with his struggles with alcohol and, substance abuses, whatever it is. And I think he's now on the upswing out of that. And that's why we're also seeing a different kind of Brad Pitt, a maybe more mellowed one. I haven't seen, obviously Babylon has been released in the US. It hasn't come out anywhere else yet. It comes out, I think, wide release at the end of January. We'll see what that is, what that's like. But there's a lot of, I think now, him finding himself in cinema. And I'm actually interested to see, I like Brad Pitt, so I'm interested to see where that takes him.
I mean, I like Brad Pitt a lot in the Ocean's 9, 10, 11 series.
Yeah.
And then I loved him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But apart from that, I need to see him in something that captures what he can do, because I think the way that he was depicted in all those Ocean's, Danny Ocean-like films, that for me is his sweet spot,
Yeah.
He's never really been in a rom-com. Even in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it was more about the film and the off-screen stuff than his role there. He's always in those Danny Ocean films, I thought that's his sweet spot as an actor. And even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I thought he was great in that as well. Bullet Train, I didn't really feel played to his strengths. And I'm really not excited about that being the franchise that he hitches his wagon to. Because I just don't think there's enough there.
Well, if it is a franchise, will be to be determined. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
But you never know, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was our... Is there any other shout outs that you want to throw out there for 2022?
I mean, I think we've got to say that we had a really powerful year where our streaming platforms competed with cinema.
Yeah.
Everything prior to 2022 was just kind of like a cluster, right?
Yeah.
2021, 2020, it was hard to really take anything away because it was about availability. And honestly, there wasn't a great lineup in the cinemas to go see. We saw Dune, there was some other stuff, but generally, cinemas were trying to bounce back, and things like Black Widow instead were, shown on television. 2022, I think, was the first year where the two platforms kind of competed a little bit evenly. And I think we saw that, the streaming gave cinema a little bit of a run for its money. But when you put the number ones against each other, cinema absolutely
trounced streaming. Yeah.
Trounced the best that streaming has to offer.
Yeah. And
I think on a day-to-day basis, streaming still has good content week to week, whereas cinema is, look at what's playing in the cinema now. And this is a separate conversation, but you want to go to the cinema? Great. What do you want to see? Have you already seen Black Panther? Yes. What else is there? Avatar 2. Anything else? No. That's it. And I think that's where cinema is falling a little bit flat, is that it's got one offering, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I think that's the point is, I think that's always how it's been, in that it's generally been speaking, cinema is a high impact, let's say, experience, whereas I think streaming has been more of a steady stream or a slow burn, if you will. I also think that 2022 was probably the last year where the industry overall is hit by the impacts of COVID as much as it has been. I think we're now going to start to see numbers of Hollywood or cinematic releases be better than what we would expect than we've seen. I think pre-pandemic was at an all-time high. We had the end of phase 3 of the MCU. We had Avengers. We had multiple billion-dollar hits in the same year. Now, then, 2020, 2021, and we were hit with the pandemic. 22, we were kind of getting out of the pandemic. I think 23, now we're going to be well on the way of recovery, in the sense that now I don't think people are going to have these hybrid releases where there's a few weeks in the cinema and then the streaming. I think now we're going to see exclusive cinematic releases followed by the usual release on streaming 16 weeks later or whatever it is.
I think that's probably right. And the first thing I'm getting geared up for is Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible. Yeah, I mean, I'm keen on it. I don't like the fact that they made it a 2-parter, which means that it's going to end on a cliffhanger. But I am looking forward to it. I think there's quite a few movies that I'm really looking forward to. That's probably one of my highlights. I think Indiana Jones is another highlight for me. Yeah, I think the summer is going to be quite interesting. I'm looking forward to this summer.
Yeah. Okay. We had a lot of content, I think, in 2022. And if that's a trend that's going to continue, and it should, then I'm really looking forward to 2020.
Perfect.
We didn't even get into all the other stuff that has been good, but hasn't really distinguished itself. Like, for example, Yellowstone, 1823, right? I mean, that's become kind of a very solid franchise as well.
So 1923 is just a one and you're done, like it's a mini series. I haven't watched it because I didn't like it. I saw the first 2 episodes and it didn't do anything for me, so I'm out.
Ooh.
But that's okay. I'm happy with Tulsa King. I'm happy with Yellowstone. Yellowstone just finished its mid-season finale, and then the second half of the season picks up towards the end of the year, so that's fine too.
What about Mosquito Coast? Have you finished that?
I saw the first 2 episodes and I'm out. It's fine. It's not bad, but it's not captivating me. I'm not enjoying it as much as I was hoping it would.
Oh. I have to say I'm not shocked, but I'm a little bit moderately surprised by that.
Yeah, I had higher hopes for it as well.
What about Jack Ryan season 3? Like that though?
I loved it. I really loved it, and I binged that in a weekend.
All right. Okay. So maybe on our next episode, we need to discuss what we're watching now and what we're just salivating over to come out.
Yeah, we can do maybe a recap of streaming, and we can talk about, I think that's probably the best thing to do, is to give a recap, maybe even call it a year for 2022. give us our, because I don't think the results are going to materially change. So I think we can do our end of year recap for 2022 and give you a list of our favorite shows on streaming. And
we didn't even talk about The Peripheral. That's a 2022
That's
show.
it. And so we can tell people, you know, hey, did cinema win out? Did streaming platforms win out? Which streaming platform was the best? What does the landscape look like? We can give everyone a State of the Union.
Oh, yeah. That's a great idea. Oh, okay.
All right.
Pete, is that it?
That's it.
Appreciate you putting together your top 10 lists for 2022. That's how we feel. I want some people to argue against us, though. What did we miss on this list? What did we put too high? What's too low? What are we irrationally positive about? And what have we like unfairly dinged?
What's your top 10 list? Why don't you drop us a comment on the bottom of this video, or leave us, DM us or tweet at us at F&S Podcast, or email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. Drop us a comment below this video. Tell us what was on your top 10 list. Tell us what worked for you, what didn't work for me. For you, am I off my rocker for putting Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent so high? I am not. Spoiler alert, it's the best movie ever.
Until the next Nick Cage movie.
Which is Renfield, where he plays Dracula.
Which is Renfield, which is supposedly quite important now, right?
I just saw the trailer. It came out 2 days ago. It looks like it's going to be pretty funny. It's got Nicholas Hoult. It's got Nicolas Cage. I'm excited.
All right. We'll look forward to it.
All right, everyone.
All right, Pete. Thank you, everybody. And listeners, as we both offered, tell us why we're wrong. Prove us wrong.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next week. Pete, Ethan, Films and Stuff. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.